Chapter 201, General Ryzel's Power. The elven warriors took aim and fired their arrows at her signal, increasing the number of casualties on the goblin army's side at a rapid rate. Meanwhile, a small team of beast soul warriors with ranged integrated monster traits also released their abilities. Although there were only a few of them, their offensive firepower was almost on par with the thousands of elven warriors combined. The corpses of the goblin warriors quickly piled up and the holes they had dug up were soon filled. What ruthless monsters! They did not even hesitate to use their comrades' bodies to fill up the holes. Sunset frowned at the sight of this. She was unnerved by the heartlessness of the goblins. She quickly calmed herself. She couldn't afford to get distracted now. Switch to melee weapons. She shouted when she noticed that the goblin army was closing in. Hearing her words, the elven warriors abandoned their bows and unsheathed their blades. General Ryzel stepped forward and shouted with his sword pointed to the sky. "Prepare for close combat." "Yes, sir." The elven warriors replied in unison, their voices shook the forest. When the goblin army reached a certain distance, Ryzel bellowed, "Charge!" He led the vanguard, fearlessly charging without hesitation. Following closely behind him were the elven warriors. They formed a triangle formation with Ryzel as the focal point. When viewed from above, their formation looked like that of an arrowhead. "No one can stop my sword." Ryzel snorted as he lunged forward, swinging his sword in a horizontal motion. Whoosh! With him at the forefront, they tore through the goblin army's formation unimpeded. No one could stop Ryzel. He was like a fierce tiger hunting a flock of sheep. The biggest reason for his fearsome killing power was his sword. It was a relic-level weapon with a special engraved ability. Unlike most relic-level weapons with ranged abilities, his sword possessed the power to devour the blood of his slain enemies. The more blood his sword devoured, the stronger it amplified his physical strength. However, there was also one major problem. The more blood it devoured, the more it affected his mentality. It was like a double-edged skill, so he rarely used the sword's engraved ability. But he couldn't care less about it. He wanted to avenge the elven warriors who had fallen in the grasslands. Ryzel's eyes turned red and veins protruded on his face as his sword absorbed more goblin blood. Kill! 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 His movements became even faster and his power also increased significantly. The goblin warriors and even the nearby trees weren't spared from his ferocious attacks. Meanwhile, Rosalie, who had yet to step into battle, frowned as she watched him slowly descend into madness. That idiot. She had repeatedly warned Ryzel not to rely too much on his sword's engraved ability, but the latter clearly didn't heed her advice. "Your Majesty, please allow me to stop Ryzel from using his sword's power." Rosalie turned her gaze to Garendel, who was standing next to her. The elven king was observing the battle with a stern face when he heard her words. "All right." Garendel approved her request. He also didn't want to see Ryzel fall into depravity. After getting the king's permission, Rosalie nodded gratefully before she rushed to join the battle. Now that he was left alone, Garendel looked at the side of the human warriors. Of the 3 transcendent knights they had, only Warwick had joined the battle. Lucas and Galliner were still waiting for the right moment to attack. They had already discussed this during their meeting. It was a strategy to preserve their strength before the arrival of the goblin monarchs. Otherwise, with all of them exhausted, they wouldn't have enough energy to fight with those dangerous monsters. As if sensing his gaze, Lucas turned his head and gave him a nod. What keen perception! Garendel thought to himself as he nodded back in response. He then moved his attention back to the battle. At this moment, thousands of goblins had already been killed and a few hundred of them were slaughtered by Ryzel himself. He didn't feel a hint of remorse after killing those monsters. He didn't know if it was the after effects of using his sword's engraved ability or if it was just his own hatred towards the goblins. Die! His eyes were already bloodshot and he was also about to be consumed by madness, but he didn't notice anything since he was too focused on killing more enemies. Just then, he suddenly sensed a fearsome aura locking in on him. HM. He stopped in his tracks and scanned his surroundings, but other than the goblin warriors charging at him, he didn't sense anything more threatening in particular. Strange. I definitely felt a frightening presence nearby. The weird sensation brought him back to reality. What is happening to me? He realized that he had been consumed by the sword's power. Damn it. I almost lost control of myself. In that instant, an overwhelming pressure descended upon him. He narrowed his eyes and looked in a certain direction. This time, he finally discovered the source of this pressure. It was a goblin monarch. However, unlike the goblin monarchs that they had fought recently, this one had a more intimidating aura. It was playing with its bone sword as it approached him with steady steps. The monster also wore a hideous smile that made him feel unsettled. This goblin monarch seems to be different. He frowned. Rizel adjusted his stance while keeping his eyes on the goblin monarch. He had a feeling that it could kill him if he was even a little bit careless. Whoosh! The goblin monarch suddenly lunged at him, brandishing its bone sword with a casual slash. A purple wind blade shot toward Rizel with lightning speed. Be careful. A familiar voice drifted into his ears. Rizel didn't attempt to block the wind blade. He twisted his body, evading it in the nick of time. Hiss. Hiss. The tree behind him melted in just a few seconds. What? Chapter 202, The Engraved Ability of Rosalie's Daggers. Sunset, who was watching from a distance, was stunned when she saw this familiar goblin monarch. It was the monster that she had fought together with Igris. It's that thing. Rizel wouldn't be able to handle that monster on his own. She had experienced the goblin monarch's power. It was the most powerful foe that she had encountered. I must warn him. Just then, she saw Rosalie rushing toward Rizel's direction with unbelievable speed. Some goblin warriors tried to block her path, but they all died after one slash to their throats. With the Grand Elder's help, it should be fine. After knowing that Rosalie was intending to support Rizel, Sunset felt relieved. I must finish my task here and help them as soon as I can. Sunset took a deep breath and moved her focus back to her task. Meanwhile, Rizel and the goblin monarch were already engaged in a fierce battle. Their clashes caused great destruction to the forest, leveling trees and blasting massive holes in the ground with every collision. This monster is too powerful. Rizel could feel his arms going numb. He had to imbue his arms with mana to minimize the pain and the damage. The monster sent him a taunting smile. Elf, your weapon has a strange ability, my sword is still more powerful. The goblin monarch remarked with a disdainful tone. Rizel, do not fall for its taunts. Just when he was about to retort, Rosalie's voice drifted into his ears. Whoosh! Rosalie appeared beside him, looking at him with a cold expression. Grand Elder. He was surprised. She wasn't supposed to come out so soon, but it seemed like she had to step in earlier than planned because of him. Shut up and focus on the battle and do not overuse your sword's ability. Rosalie gave him a piece of her mind. Rizel didn't dare refute her words. What's the plan? He asked. Just give it your all, Rosalie responded. In the next moment, their figures blurred as they charged toward the goblin monarch. Whoosh! Whoosh! Clang! Clang! Now that Rosalie had joined the battle, the goblin monarch could no longer afford to be careless. It sensed that the elven woman was a lot more powerful. Bang! Bang! No one dared to get closer to them. At this moment, Rosalie sent a flurry of quick slashes. Whoosh! 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 An ordinary goblin monarch would have a hard time blocking her daggers, but the monster in front of her was no ordinary creature. It managed to deflect and block her attacks with minimal effort. Even with Rizel supporting her offensively, they still couldn't land a direct blow on the monster. It was very elusive. While they were battling this particular goblin monarch, the clash between the goblin army and the allied forces of the humans and elves had become more intense. More powerful goblins had already emerged, putting more pressure upon them. Galanor was forced to join the battle to lighten the load on the allied forces. A while later, the Elven King also stepped in, greatly boosting their morale. Healers. Gather the wounded and provide them treatment. Garandel shouted to the medics. The scene had become more chaotic. The once peaceful forest had already turned into hell. More and more warriors from both sides fell as the battle progressed. The battle between Rosalie, Rizel, and the sword-wielding goblin monarch was still raging. The stamina of both elven warriors was starting to decline, greatly decreasing their battle power. The goblin monarch seemed to have sensed this, and it became even more arrogant. Is this the extent of your abilities? I expected more from you too, but all I got was disappointment. It uttered while shaking its head. Rizel's mouth twitched upon hearing its mocking remarks. If it weren't for Rosalie's presence, he would have already used his sword's ability to make it shut its mouth. Do not fall for its tricks. It is also exhausted. Rosalie muttered with a deep look. The goblin monarch tried to hide it, but she noticed that its speed had also slowed down. The goblin monarch's smile stiffened when it heard her words. It snorted and lunged itself toward them, brandishing its sword with terrifying force. Rosalie and Rizel quickly evaded its corrosive wind blades. Hiss! 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 Seeing that all its attacks were useless, the goblin monarch imbued more mana in its limbs, significantly boosting its speed. Die, you hypocritical elves! The monster bellowed with rage as it released more wind blades. Whoosh! Whoosh! Rosalie could still keep up with its attacks, but Rizel, who had been fighting for a long time, was starting to accumulate fatigue. His movements had become sluggish and he could barely evade the wind blades. I must hold on. Rizel no longer bothered to hold back. He unleashed the power of his sword while increasing his mana output. I'm sorry, Grand Elder, but we must end this fight soon. He shouted as he bombarded the goblin monarch with a series of explosive attacks. Rosalie frowned upon seeing his reckless actions. That fool. She also activated her dagger's power. Both daggers had the same engraved ability. Upon activation, she could wield the power of darkness. Black smoke gushed out from her daggers and Rosalie's presence also gradually disappeared. The power of darkness improved her camouflaged ability. Soon, her presence vanished. Even the powerful goblin monarch failed to detect her, making it frown in annoyance. In its rage, it waved its sword wildly, causing even more destruction to the forest. Rizel clashed with the monster to give Rosalie the perfect opportunity to strike. Surprisingly, he managed to fight toe-to-toe with the goblin monarch. I was only holding back earlier, you beast! Rizel shouted as he put more strength into his sword. Clang! Clang! The goblin monarch was momentarily surprised by his sudden surge of power, but it quickly understood what was happening. It sneered and responded with contempt. Do you think this borrowed power can stop me? You are one foolish elf. Chapter 203, The Monster That Effortlessly Killed the Goblin Monarch. Powered by his sword's engraved ability, Rizel launched a series of ferocious attacks on the goblin monarch. Clang! Clang! The monster managed to block his sword, but it was starting to get tired of the prolonged battle. To end things quickly, it released more mana, greatly elevating its firepower. However, Rizel was like a tough nut to crack. Even with its fearsome attacks, the elven warrior remained steady like an immovable wall. I need to buy more time for the Grand Elder. Rizel gritted his teeth, forcing every bit of his remaining mana and energy for one final duel. His goal wasn't to win against the goblin monarch. He was aware that he wasn't strong enough to defeat this deadly monster. The goblin monarch was oblivious to his thoughts. It was so intent on killing him that it had momentarily forgotten about the female elf. D.E. The goblin monarch suddenly unleashed a huge wind blade that spanned over 5 meters. It shot toward him like a bullet, causing the air to violently fluctuate. Whoosh! Rizal no longer had the energy to block this attack, so he could only deflect it and try to change its trajectory by raising his sword in a certain angle. The purplish wind blade brushed past his sword, causing a loud shing. Shying. The force behind the wind blade forced him to kneel, but he still somehow managed to deflect the destructive blow. However, the impact almost crushed his internal organs. If he wasn't a transcendent knight, he would have already fallen, but due to his physically stronger body, he was able to preserve his life. Rizal lost consciousness after deflecting the wind blade. Meanwhile, the goblin monarch was flabbergasted. It didn't even have time to complain when it suddenly sensed an overwhelming killing intent from behind. With a turn of its head, it saw an elven woman brandishing her daggers upon him. A dark aura manifested as Rosalie emerged from the darkness. In the next moment, her daggers found their way to their target, inflicting heavy damage on the goblin monarch. Roar! The monster was enraged after receiving a gruesome wound on its chest. It had superior vitality, so it was able to survive her attacks. Even so, the wounds it had sustained had already exceeded the threshold of its endurance. It staggered and used its sword to prop itself up. I am not convinced. I do not believe that this is my limit. The monster refused to give up. It couldn't accept the fact that it had been defeated by 2 transcendent elves. Suddenly, an immense power burst forth from the goblin monarch. Its skin cracked and there seemed to be a new layer of skin that was starting to take form underneath. Rosalie was stunned upon seeing this. Is it undergoing evolution? She was horrified when she thought about this, and she couldn't help but recall the words that Lucas had told them before this battle. I must stop it. She narrowed her eyes into slits. Just when she was about to make her move, a heavy, oppressive aura enveloped the entire forest. What kind of aura is this? Rosalie was terrified when she realized that she was momentarily immobilized. She couldn't move her limbs and her body wasn't listening to her. All she could do was move her eyes. When she looked up, it was then that she noticed something that made her even more terrified. Flying above her was a goblin with horns on top of its head. Its facial features were almost human-like, but the most striking thing about this creature was the pair of draconic wings on its back. The monster seemed to have noticed her gaze. It stared at her with its emotionless eyes, but it quickly retracted its gaze, treating her with utter disregard. The monster descended in front of the goblin monarch that was still in the middle of its evolution. It took a step forward and stretched its arm to grab the goblin monarch's head. And with a light squeeze, it crushed the goblin monarch's head. Rosalie felt goosebumps all over her body upon witnessing this scene. The invincible goblin monarch was easily killed by this monster. She wanted to scream and run away, but she still couldn't move her body. No one can take my place. A deep, beastly voice drifted into her ears. The monster suddenly turned its head toward her, scaring her out of her wits. No. In her moment of despair, she closed her eyes. Bang! A loud bang echoed, followed by a violent shockwave that sent her flying into the air. When she opened her eyes, she found out that she could now move her body. What happened? She stabilized herself in midair to land gracefully. She then looked ahead and saw that a human warrior was already standing in front of the winged goblin monarch. It is him. Lucas Silversword. So this is what he was waiting for. Rosalie sensed Lucas' formidable aura, which was even far stronger than her own. I will take care of this. Go and get your comrade out of here, Lucas said while keeping his eyes on his target. Rosalie snapped back to reality when she heard his voice. She nodded her head and rushed to Rizal's side. She then sent Lucas a grateful look and said, "Be careful. That monster is unfathomable." "I am aware," Lucas calmly replied. Rosalie no longer dallied and left while carrying Rizal to safety. After she left, Lucas and the winged goblin monarch engaged in a fierce face-off. No one made a move, as if they were silently assessing each other. This monster is near the catastrophe grade. I can feel its power by just looking at it. Will I be able to stop it? Lucas furrowed his eyebrows. He had come prepared for this battle. He had equipped the dark diamond shield and a relic-level sword. Alaric also lent him the battle armor he got from the old Marquis. He was armed to the teeth, but he still felt inferior to the monster. The monster pointed at him and uttered in a voice devoid of emotion. I can sense your fear, human. Lucas raised an eyebrow at its words, but he didn't bother to respond. He raised his sword and pointed it toward the monster. He spoke no words, but he had conveyed his intentions to the monster. Subsequently, the both of them turned into a blur, disappearing from their previous spot. Clang! 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 Lucas' sword and the monster's long sharp claws clashed repeatedly, but they were so fast that even the elite knights were having trouble keeping up with their speed. A series of booms reverberated across the forest as the two fought. At this moment, Lucas was shaken by the monster's power. This thing isn't even at the catastrophe grade, but I can barely keep up with it even with all the relic-level items I have on me. There was also one more thing that made him surprised. It was the battle armor that was lent to him by Alaric. Unexpectedly, it was capable of absorbing most of the damage, and because of this, he managed to endure the power of the monster. I do not understand why the Lord Marquis would give something this valuable to my son. He immediately removed the useless thoughts in his mind and focused his attention on the battle. One mistake could be lethal here, so he had to be extra careful. The monster revealed a look of surprise the longer they fought. It didn't expect that a human could be this formidable. It had never faced setbacks throughout its existence, and it had successfully eliminated all the obstacles in its path. However, for the first time ever, it was struggling to destroy an enemy. It backed off a few meters and looked at Lucas with a solemn gaze as it asked. You are the strongest I have met, human. What is your name? Lucas. Lucas replied before he rushed forward with his sword raised to the sky in preparation for a lethal vertical slash. Whoosh! The monster wasn't flustered. It lifted its arm and blocked his sword using its long, steel-like claws. Clang! Another earth-shaking shockwave erupted after they clashed. What followed was a battle that shook the entire forest. Both experts turned the surroundings into ruins. The towering trees and even some hills were leveled to the ground. The warriors from both armies even tacitly agreed to move further from them to avoid becoming collateral damage. Soon, both experts unintentionally created a massive crater that spanned over 100 meters in diameter due to the ferocity of their battle. It was a scene that no one would forget. Alaric, who was watching the battle from afar, was feeling worried. Please be safe, Dad. This was after all a monster that was unheard of, one that made the difficulty of his mission go from hard to extreme. If his father was defeated, everyone would be at the monster's mercy. Chapter 204, Lucas' Brilliant Idea. While Lucas was fighting with the winged goblin monarch, the war between the goblin army and the allied forces of the humans and elves was still far from over. Alaric was still not strong enough to fight with a goblin monarch, so his task was to eliminate the goblin chieftains. He led the human warriors valiantly, letting everyone know that he had the blood of the silver swords running through his veins. Shield bearers in front. Archers, prepare to shoot at my signal. Fire. Melee units, charge with me. Everyone was amazed by his well-timed commands. He didn't act like a young man in his late teens, but a general who had been through countless battles. Just his presence in front of the formation alone boosted everyone's morale. At this point, Alaric had already cemented an unrivaled reputation. Even the stubborn veteran warriors worshipped him. Suddenly, 3 goblin chieftains leading hundreds of goblin warriors came charging toward them. Seeing this, Alaric narrowed his eyes. Do not falter. The warriors of the north are unbeatable. He shouted as he rushed to the front, taking the most dangerous position in the formation. Upon hearing his awe-inspiring words, everyone issued a war cry. Soon, both sides clashed and tore each other apart. Alaric fought with the 3 goblin chieftains to stop them from attacking his subordinates. With powerful foes against him, his improved dual sword technique was fully displayed. Even though he was fighting 3 goblin chieftains, he was able to keep up with them and even injure them severely. Whoosh! Whoosh! Alaric's swords had become faster and more precise after he had perfected the dual sword technique. The custom-made short sword really improved my overall combat power. After this battle ends, I must give it a fitting name. Recently, he tried to come up with a name for the short sword, but nothing was well suited, so he temporarily set it aside. Alaric avoided the attacks of the monsters and targeted one of them, chopping off its head with a clean strike to its neck. KK. The goblin chieftains attacked with even more ferocity after witnessing the death of their companion. Clang! 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 However, Alaric managed to effortlessly block their attacks. He then stabbed out his sword, penetrating the chest of another goblin chieftain, killing it instantly. Now, only 1 goblin chieftain remained. Alaric pulled his sword and kicked the dead goblin chieftain, sending it flying a couple of meters away. The remaining goblin chieftain revealed a look of fear. It took a step back while keeping its eyes on him. Alaric didn't give it the chance to escape. He lunged forward, imbued the rare steel sword with mana, and swung with his full force. Whoosh! He summoned a fearsome wind blade that cut the goblin chieftain in half. In the blink of an eye, he had killed 3 powerful monsters. Just a few months ago, I could barely kill a goblin chieftain with the help of a few knights, but now... Alaric shook off the random thoughts and went to help the warriors in killing the remaining goblins. When he joined the fray, he was like an unstoppable beast. No goblin could stop him, and those that stood in his path were killed with just a slash of his sword. Alaric stood still and looked at the corpses around him with a cold gaze. He felt no joy, for some of the northern warriors were killed in that battle. He silently prayed for their souls to be accepted in Aru's kingdom. Note, in case you have forgotten, Aru is the name of the god he worships. Meanwhile, Lucas and the winged goblin monarch had already exchanged hundreds of attacks, but both remained in top condition. Lucas had minor cuts on his face and some bruises on his chest, but these minor wounds didn't affect him. The battle armor can stop the monster's claws, but its force still leaves bruises on my body. Lucas thought to himself as he looked at the winged monster. It was a bit faster than him, and it could also fly, so inflicting damage upon it was difficult. Human, you would have already died if you didn't have that armor on you. The monster calmly spoke. Lucas didn't respond, but he inwardly agreed with its comment. The battle armor had indeed protected his life. In the next moment, the two clashed once more. Bang! The winged goblin monarch seemed to be unhappy. It released a burst of mana to its hand, clenched it into a fist, and swung with unimaginable strength. Whoosh! The air trembled and fluctuated violently as its fist approached Lucas with tremendous force. Lucas frowned and raised the dark diamond shield above him while activating its power to enhance its defensive ability. Bang! Another shockwave erupted as the monster's fist struck his shield. Due to the force of its punch, Lucas' feet sunk deeply into the ground. Lucas' arm felt numbed after taking that blow. Luckily for him, the battle armor took most of the residual damage and evenly distributed the remaining force throughout his body. Still, the pain made him frown. Using multiple relic level items at once consumes a lot of mana. Furthermore, this battle armor consumes twice as much mana as 2 relic level equipment. He thought to himself. He couldn't afford to prolong the battle any longer. Thinking about this, Lucas erupted with more power. He imbued more mana into his limbs and into his sword to increase his power. Subsequently, he launched a flurry of attacks, but he couldn't even properly hit the winged goblin monarch. It is too fast. Suddenly, the monster flapped its wings and flew to the sky, circling above him like an eagle to its prey. Sweat trickled down Lucas' face as he carefully watched its movements. Without any warning, the monster dove to the ground while brandishing its sharp claws at Lucas. "It will not be easy to take me down," he shouted in his mind as he blocked its claws with his shield. He then stabbed out his sword, intending to cut off its legs. However, just like an elusive dragonfly, it twisted its body and flew off, deftly avoiding his sword. Lucas clicked his tongue. How can I even land a direct blow on this monster? It was too fast and cautious. Even though he had imbued his attacks with mana, he still couldn't touch it. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind. Hold on a minute. I think this might work. His lips curved upwards when he thought of a brilliant idea. The monster seemed to have noticed his smile, which left it baffled. It wondered why the human transcendent knight was smiling when it couldn't even touch its shadow. It circled above him, waiting for the right moment to attack. Suddenly, Lucas lowered his shield. The monster immediately took the chance and swooped down with immense force. Whoosh! However, an unexpected thing happened. Instead of blocking its claws with his shield, Lucas threw his shield and took the blow with his chest. I got you. Lucas grimaced as he grabbed the monster's body, hugging it tightly to prevent it from escaping. The battle armor managed to protect him from its sharp claws, but the force still caused him severe internal damage. The monster was shocked by the turn of events. Cunning human, release me. The winged goblin monarch was enraged. It wriggled out of his grasp, but Lucas held it firmly, refusing to let go. Die, you monster. Lucas imbued his remaining mana into his sword before stabbing it into the monster's body. The winged goblin monarch had a tough skin, but it couldn't block a relic-level sword. The sword pierced through its side and penetrated deeply. KKHK. The sword's power tore its internal organs apart, but the beast didn't die immediately. With blood leaking from its mouth, it grabbed him by the neck and tried to squeeze him to death. However, its strength gradually left its body. Despicable, human. It muttered with hatred while staring deeply at him. Lucas couldn't care less about what it was feeling. He struck its face with his forehead, forcing it to let go of him. The winged goblin monarch staggered backward with Lucas' sword still firmly attached to its body. The monster kneeled, spat a mouthful of blood, and breathed heavily. Lucas' sword had punctured its lungs, making it difficult for the winged goblin monarch to breathe. I feel cold. The monster thought as it lifted its head to look at the transcendent knight. Sensing its weakening gaze, Lucas approached the monster with steady footsteps. Each step made him grimace. I think it broke my ribs, he thought as he stopped in front of the creature. You have won against me. I accept my defeat. Kill me, the monster uttered. Chapter 205, Bonus Reward. The monster's eyes trembled in the face of its impending death. All right. Lucas nodded his head. He didn't make it suffer for long and killed it with a single punch to its head. Blood and brain matter splattered all over Lucas, but his eyes remained calm. Now that the greatest danger has been eliminated, this war is over. With the collapse of the winged goblin monarch, the goblin army fell into chaos. Half of the goblin monarchs even left and retreated with their troops, leaving the goblin army with only a few thousand warriors. In the next 2 hours, the allied forces of the humans and elves took care of the remaining enemies. ____. Mission complete. Rewards: 1,500 battle points, 50 EXP, 50 stat points, equipment upgrade card X1, random trait upgrade card X1. ____. You have done the impossible. A bonus reward will be granted for killing the special monster. Only applies for extreme difficulty missions. You received an elite knight card. Alaric, who was resting against a tree, was stunned when he saw the rewards. What? There is actually a bonus reward. When his mission's difficulty was changed to extreme, he thought that the rewards were atrociously low. Now, he finally realized that he was just overthinking it. The true reward of the extreme difficulty mission lies in how he would complete his task. Alaric Silversword, Elite Knight, EXP, 169, 219/1000. Potential, A. Traits, Horseback Riding, C. Swordsmanship, SSS, Close Combat, C. Archery, E. Hunting, E. Tracking, E. Sixth Sense, E. Monster Affinity, F. Mana Gathering, C. Appraisal, B. Strength, 170. Stamina, 180. Agility, 180. Vitality, 150. Endurance, 160. Mana, 230, 235. Battle points, 1960, 3460. Stat points, 67, 117. Requirements for the next advancement, 1000 EXP, 250 in all attributes, and 10,000 battle points. Do you want to use the random trait upgrade card? Yes, no. Do you want to use the equipment upgrade card on the selected item? Yes, no. Do you want to use the Elite Knight card? Yes, no. Alaric was eager to click yes, but he stopped himself and decisively closed the cyan screen with a thought. We won, my lord. A jubilant voice drifted into his ears. Alaric turned his head and saw Galliner leading a few elite knights from the three houses. Alaric smiled at them. He didn't want to dampen their celebratory mood. You have done your part well, everyone. I am proud of you. His words made everyone feel honored. We were only following your instructions, my lord. Baron Smith Heinrich said with a flattering smile. Lord Smith is right. We were only able to accomplish all that because of your commands, my lord. Another one piped in. It was Jared Paxley. Facing their enthusiastic praises, Alaric could only smile helplessly. He replied to them one by one before he excused himself and went to help with the extraction of the beast soul crystals. The elves promised to give them all the beast soul crystals, so he was happy to help with this simple task. Your name is Alaric, right? Suddenly, he heard someone speaking to him in the common tongue. HM. He turned around and realized that it was actually the Elven King, Garandel Greenwood. Just like all other elves, he also had handsome facial features. Alaric also noticed some resemblance between him and Ivana. Your Majesty. Alaric lowered his head. In front of the Elven King, he didn't dare to be presumptuous. Garandel nodded at him. He then observed the young man and found him more likable than when they first met. He had witnessed Alaric's valiance in battle. He was still young, but he acted like a veteran commander. Many witnessed his abilities, and he also has the formidable Lucas to back him up. I don't think any of those high elves will come to trouble him if ever my daughter decides to marry him. If it weren't for the human warriors, they would have lost this battle. He couldn't even begin to imagine what might have happened if they had fought the goblin colony by themselves. Just that winged goblin monarch alone was enough to destroy the elven army. However, such a ferocious monster still fell under Lucas' hands. Your father is still being treated by our healers, so I came to you instead. Thank you for helping us in our time of need. The elves will never forget this favor. Garandel lowered his head to express his gratitude. Some would say that it was demeaning for a king to lower his head, but to Garandel, it was nothing as long as it could help him protect his kingdom. Alaric hurriedly waved his hand and replied. There is no need to be like this, Your Majesty. Ivana is my friend and I cannot bear to see her suffer. Besides, we are also getting rewarded for helping you. Garandel smiled upon hearing his words. I understand now. He replied with cryptic words which baffled Alaric. What did he understand? Alaric wanted to ask the Elven King, but he noticed that the latter didn't want to explain himself, so he decided not to pursue the topic. Garandel approached him and tapped his shoulder as he said. Inform your men to prepare. We will go back to the Greenwood Kingdom soon. You guys better stay and recuperate. I promise that all your injured warriors will be treated by our healers. Alaric didn't reject his kind intentions. He lowered his head and replied, "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good." Garandel chuckled and left to deal with the remaining tasks. Meanwhile, Alaric immediately gathered his men and told them to prepare for the return trip. He also instructed them to build makeshift wagons for the injured soldiers. An hour later, the Allied forces left the forest and headed back to the Elven Kingdom. On their way back to the kingdom, Alaric was on horseback, acting all calm. "These elves are staring at me openly." He could sense the elves' gazes on him, but he pretended like he didn't notice anything. Facing all this attention, he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. Chapter 206, Alliance. Upon returning to the Greenwood Kingdom, Garandel invited all the military officers to his treehouse except those who were injured. Everyone was baffled by the Elven King's invitation. Seeing the confusion in everyone's faces, Garandel raised his hand and said, "Everyone." After gathering their attention, he continued, "I have received reports from our scouts that the goblin colony had already disbanded. The goblin monarchs that survived the war took their tribes and left, causing the fragmentation of the colony. They all thought that there would be another battle, so the king's words made everyone relieved. But we cannot be happy just yet." Garandel's voice suddenly turned cold. He paused and scanned everyone's faces as he announced, "We do not know when another enemy would come to invade us, so we must expand our military forces and bolster our defenses." The war with the goblins made him realize that their military power was a bit lacking. If it weren't for Lucas and the human warriors, they would have been defeated by the goblin army. While the king told them about his plans for the expansion, Alaric just sat there in silence. "The Elven King invited us here to let us know that he trusts us, but he is too naive. If it were someone else who had ulterior motives, it would have been dangerous for his kingdom. Exposing their military expansion plans like this is like telling everyone your weakness." Alaric inwardly shook his head. Garandel was a kind leader, but he was too trusting. Garandel talked for almost an hour before he switched to another agenda. The war this time would have been impossible to win without our human friends. He turned his gaze to Alaric and lowered his head. "As the king of the Greenwood Kingdom, please allow me to formally express our gratitude." No elves laughed or criticized the king for lowering his head to the humans. They also thought that they deserved their gratitude, so they followed the king's example and bowed their heads. "Alaric, I would like to form an alliance with your household," Garandel proposed. "What?" "An alliance with the Elven Kingdom would bring many benefits to their household. Aside from the opportunity to make trades, they could also offer mutual military support. However, this alliance also carried some risks, so Alaric didn't rush to accept the Elven King's proposal. Seeing his silence, everyone quietly waited for him to make the decision. He was the heir of House Silversword, so he had the authority to make this decision. After a moment of silence, Alaric cleared his throat and replied, "Thank you for the proposal, Your Majesty. As the heir of House Silversword, I accept your offer to form an alliance." He had thought it through. Other than gaining military support and potential business partnerships, being allied with the elves will help us expand our reach to the Enchanted Woodlands. The Enchanted Woodlands was the home of numerous powerful creatures and dangerous monsters, so no one dared to venture deeply into this land, but with the elves' support, things might be different. Alaric didn't reveal his thoughts. He only expressed his agreement to form an alliance, which made the elves happy. He felt a bit guilty when he saw their reaction. "Great. Once your father has recovered, we will formalize this agreement." Garandel couldn't conceal his joy. "Once we are allied with House Silversword, we do not need to be afraid of being attacked again." He also had some ulterior motives in making this proposal, but what he didn't know was that this decision would one day cause massive changes to the power structure of the Enchanted Woodlands. "Alaric, is there anything that you want? Tell me and I will do my best to make it happen." Garandel felt that the rewards they had promised were too low, so he decided to grant Alaric's wish on a whim. Hearing this, Alaric was taken aback, but he didn't show it to his face. "I was thinking about how I should ask them to engrave an ability on my short sword. It seems like I do not need to go through so much trouble." he thought to himself as he replied to the king. Your Majesty, I do have something that I want. I am listening. Go on. It is like this. I have a weapon here that I want to be engraved with an ability, so I would like to ask one of your beast soul warriors to help me with this. Alaric grabbed the custom-made short sword strapped to his waist and showed it to the Elven King. Garandel could already tell at a glance that the sword was made of special materials. Bring your sword over. He beckoned to Alaric. Alaric nodded and approached the king. He then handed him the short sword without hesitation. The elves might be arrogant, but they were trustworthy. Good sword. Wait, this texture and this coldness. He discovered that it was made of mithril and another material with inherent cold attributes. You have a good sword. It must have been made by a great artisan. Garandel praised as he handed back the sword. Alaric couldn't help but think about the drunkard, Goran, when he heard the Elven King's words. With a light chuckle, he nodded. The sword was indeed crafted by our household's best blacksmith. No wonder. Garandel rubbed his chin. All right. Tell me which ability you want to be engraved on this sword. He stared deeply at Alaric, curious to know his decision. Alaric already knew which ability he wanted for the sword, so he quickly gave his response. I would like Sir Neos' ice manipulation ability, Your Majesty. He had seen stronger integrated monster traits, but he felt that Neos' ice manipulation was perfect for the sword. Garandel was surprised by this, but he immediately understood the reason for his choice. I see. You made a great choice. Neos' ice manipulation is indeed the most fitting ability for your sword. After saying those words, Garandel turned his head to Neo. What do you think, Neo? Chapter 207, I think I need a massage. Neo also participated in the war and he had sustained light injuries, but to a three-ringed beast soul master like him, his injuries were like tiny scratches. I have no objections, Your Majesty. Lord Alaric is our benefactor, so I am willing to fulfill his request. Neo responded with a nod. Garandel smiled upon hearing his response. Good. Thank you for accepting my selfish request, Sir Neo. Alaric cupped his fists with a look of gratitude. He had gotten another equipment upgrade card after completing the extreme difficulty mission. He wondered if he could get another epic level item. Just the thought of it made him feel excited. Neo waved his hand. Please hand me the sword. Alaric walked toward him and handed the sword over. Upon receiving the sword, Neo calmly told him. I will return it tomorrow. Alaric nodded at his words. All right. Please be careful and do not exhaust your mana. Engraving one's integrated monster trait to an equipment wasn't easy and it also carried serious risk. Alaric didn't want him to suffer mana-related injuries for his sake. Amen. Neo hummed in response. After this conversation, Garandel ended the meeting with a short speech. Alaric rushed to his designated treehouse and immediately used his random trait upgrade card. Do you want to use the random trait upgrade card? Yes, no. Alaric clicked, yes, without hesitation. Congratulations. Your Monster Affinity, F, trait has been upgraded to Monster Affinity, E. Alaric raised an eyebrow when he saw what had been upgraded. It was a trait that he had rarely used, but he wasn't too disappointed since it could also help him in certain situations. Too bad. I am just too unlucky. I wonder when I can upgrade my close combat and/or my sixth sense. These two traits were the most useful after his swordsmanship trait. They were very crucial in battles, especially his sixth sense trait, which had helped him overcome many dangerous situations. Should I use the Elite Knight card? He was still in Elven territory, so he was afraid that his secret would be revealed if he used the card. Alaric contemplated deeply. I will hold on to it for now. He felt that it was too risky, so he decided to temporarily put it aside. Just then, he suddenly heard a series of knocks on his door. Knock. 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 Alaric, it is me. When he heard Ivana's voice behind the door, he quickly walked over to open it. "Ivana, how are you?" Alaric smiled upon seeing her beautiful face. "I am all right. I heard that you fought in the vanguard, so I am here to check on your condition, but it seems like you are doing well." Ivana answered while checking if he had sustained injuries. Hearing this, Alaric's lips subconsciously curved upward. "Actually, my muscles feel a bit sore right now." He didn't know why, but he felt the urge to tease this elven princess. Ivana furrowed her eyebrows, but she didn't notice the strange look in his eyes. "Is there any way I can help you?" she asked. Alaric thought for a moment and replied. "Now that you mention it, I think a massage will help me relieve this feeling of soreness." Ivana blushed upon hearing this. She clenched her fist and responded in a mosquito-like voice. "All right. How should I massage you?" Alaric widened his eyes. He wasn't serious when he said those words and he only meant it as a joke, but she actually took it seriously. You can just massage my back." He tested the waters while observing her reaction. Ivana gritted her teeth and nodded, her cheeks reddening. "Okay. Sit down and turn around." She spoke coldly to mask her nervousness. "Okay." Alaric quickly followed her instructions. He took his seat and turned his back on her. She actually agreed. Ivana took a deep breath and approached him. "I have not done this before, so I might not do well. Please forgive me," she muttered. "It is fine. Just do it at your own pace." Alaric chuckled and gestured at her to relax. Ivana nodded. She then nervously stretched out her hands to his back. When she touched his back and felt his warmth, she felt like she was electrocuted. It was like she was invading a forbidden territory. Alaric could feel her hands shaking, but he didn't say anything to save her from embarrassment. Suddenly, he felt a wave of comfort when an unknown energy began to flow from her hands to his back. "This is..." Noticing his surprise, Ivana smiled and explained. "Just relax. This is my integrated monster trait. It has many uses and this is just one of them." "That is wonderful," Alaric exclaimed. He remembered that her integrated monster trait was an S-rated trait called Nature's Blessing, but he had no idea what it could do. From the looks of it, her integrated monster trait must be a versatile ability with numerous applications. "Amen. Many people helped me to get this ability," she replied in a soft tone. Alaric chatted with her to make her feel more comfortable. However, their little moment was interrupted by a series of knocks on the door. Knock. 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 Ivana was startled and she subconsciously distanced herself from Alaric. "I think I should leave now, Alaric. I do not want others to misunderstand our relationship." She spoke with a trace of reluctance. "I see. Then let me see you out." Alaric stood up while silently cursing whoever was outside the door. He then walked to the door with Ivana closely following behind him. The moment he opened the door, he saw Baron Smith standing next to an elven elite knight. "My lord." Baron Smith was stunned when he saw Alaric stepping out of his tree house with the elven princess. The elf who had come with him was similarly shocked to see Ivana. "Your Highness." Ivana didn't bother to explain herself. She looked at Alaric and said, "I will come and see you tomorrow." She didn't wait for his response and left with quick strides. Seeing this, Alaric could only watch her in silence. He then turned his head toward the two who had come for him. "Lord Smith, you better give me a good explanation for interrupting my time with Her Highness." Chapter 208, Tempted by the Elven Ladies to Bath at the River. Baron Smith was at loss for words, but when he saw Alaric's annoyed face, he could only bite the bullet. "Everyone wants to celebrate our victory, so I came here to invite you." "Fine. I will be there later." Alaric snorted and went back to his treehouse with a slam of the door. Smith Heinrich could only smile bitterly as he thought to himself. "It seems like I have inadvertently offended Lord Alaric. Meanwhile, the elf who had come with him was still reeling in shock. He couldn't believe that the cold and indifferent princess had actually entered someone's treehouse. "Let us go, buddy." Smith tapped the elven warrior's shoulder with a forced smile on his face. All right." An hour later, Alaric's annoyance finally subsided. He searched for the others and found them drinking the elves. It was a harmonious scene, something that had never happened in his past life. "What are you guys drinking?" he asked as he approached them. "My lord." Jared Paxley eagerly walked to his side with a gourd of what seemed to be elves' version of beer. Sensing Alaric's gaze, Jared handed him the gourd and said with a smile, "My lord, this is the specialty drink of the Greenwood Kingdom, the Bejeweled Nectar. It has a strong flavor and I heard that it also improves health." "Amazing, right? Why don't you give it a try? Is it really that good?" Alaric hesitated, but when the unique aroma of the drink assailed his nostrils, he couldn't resist the temptation anymore. He brought the gourd to his mouth and took a swig of the so-called specialty drink of the elves. Wow! It definitely has alcohol in it, but the taste is vastly different compared to what we drink in the Empire. This one has a fruity taste to it, almost like juice. It also packs quite the punch once it travels down your throat. Alaric could already smell a big business opportunity from this drink. I am sure the others had also thought of this, but they would not dare do this business without my House Silveredward's permission. "I love it!" Alaric exclaimed with a look of enjoyment. "I knew you would love it." Jared laughed heartily upon hearing his words. "My lord, the elves have more drinks like this. Although not as good as the Bejeweled Nectar, they are still much better than most drinks in our empire. Why don't we?" His voice trailed off, but his message was clear. He wanted House Paxley to do this business. Alaric stared deeply at him and responded in a calm voice. "Let us talk about this later with Lord Smith. I do not want him to think that I am favoring you." Jared nodded in understanding. "Yes, my lord." It was a good sign. Although they might have to share the business with House Heinrich, Jared didn't mind. He knew that they would still earn a lot once these drinks hit the shelves. Alaric joined the celebration with the warriors. Everyone shared their happiness and they also expressed their sorrows for those who had died in the battle. The celebration lasted until the next morning, but Alaric returned to his treehouse before midnight to get some rest. The next day, Alaric was awoken by the sunlight that seeped through the gaps of the window. Surprisingly, his head didn't hurt even though he had drunk a lot last night. "Another day, but I still cannot complete my daily mission." He sighed and shook his head with a regretful smile. He jumped out of the bed and stepped out of the treehouse to get some clean water to wash his body with. The elves didn't build bathrooms in their treehouses since they only took a bath in the river or the lake. Alaric felt uncomfortable with all the filth on his skin, so he wanted to freshen up a bit. Within the Greenwood Kingdom, there was a river that was connected to one of the biggest lakes in the Enchanted Woodlands, the Astral River. Alaric was headed to this river while carrying a small basin. He encountered some elves along the way. Some of them enthusiastically greeted him, but others ignored him and just went their way without saying a word. "Some elves are still guarded toward us, but this will soon change the more we interact with them." Alaric didn't think negatively about this encounter. He understood the inherent dislike of the elves toward the humans and it wasn't something that could be changed overnight. When he arrived at the river, he saw some elven women who were bathing with nothing but a thin fabric that only covered their chests and intimate parts. He almost had a nosebleed when he saw this visually striking scene. The elven women noticed his gaze, but they didn't seem to care. A few of the beauties even waved their hands, inviting him to join them. Alaric reluctantly refused them. He really wanted to join them, but he felt that something bad would happen if he did. After filling the basin with water, he quickly fled and returned to his treehouse. Damn! I almost fell into their temptations. Alaric wiped off his sweat the moment he returned to the treehouse. He hadn't touched a woman since his regression, so he felt a wave of discomfort in a certain area. He chanted a religious mantra to calm his mind. "Aru, please forgive your sinful believer. Alaric removed his clothes and rinsed his body clean with the water from the river. He then used the scented soap he had brought with him. That feels better. Alaric wiped his body dry with a towel before he changed into a new set of clothes. Just then, he heard a series of knocks on his door. Knock. 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 Hold on. I am coming, said Alaric as he walked toward the door. Upon pushing the door open, he saw an elven warrior standing outside. Good morning, my lord. Elder Neo sent me here to deliver this. The elven warrior handed him his short sword. Chapter 209, Epic Mithril Short Sword. It is finally done. He really did it in just one day. Alaric excitedly took the sword from the elven warrior. Please thank Elder Neo for me. I will visit him later to express my gratitude. I will relay your message to the elder. The elven warrior nodded, turned around, and left. Alaric wanted to try his sword right away, so he went to a secluded corner to unsheath his sword. Shying. Nothing changed with the blade except for the inscriptions added by Neo. He could already feel the strong power of ice emanating from the sword even though he hadn't imbued it with his mana. The sword has become a relic-level weapon after Sir Neo engraved it with his ice manipulation integrated monster trait. Do you want to use the equipment upgrade card on the selected item? Yes, no. A series of notifications appeared in front of him. This time, Alaric didn't hesitate and quickly clicked, yes. Congratulations. You have upgraded your rare mithril short sword to an epic mithril short sword. Epic mithril short sword. Sharpness, 75. Durability, 50. Alaric was flabbergasted by the sword's sharpness. It was actually more than 3 times sharper than his rare steel sword. The sword felt colder to touch, but there was no change to its weight. It was still light as a feather. There were also some changes to the blade. There were splashes of blue on the blade, looking like sharp fragments of ice. Alaric tested the sword's balance and found out that it was easier to wield now. Furthermore, with every slash, it would leave a wave of cold air. In a prolonged battle, this could make his enemies uncomfortable and it would even hinder their movements once the coldness accumulated. Now let us test the sword with mana. He injected his mana into the sword, making the inscriptions on the blade light up with a bright ocean blue color. The coldness of the sword also intensified, but it released an energy that made him immune to the coldness. It was as if the sword had a mind of its own and it didn't want its wielder to suffer. Alaric released a few slashes and each strike created petals of ice that could freeze an ordinary person. This is one scary power. Alaric exclaimed in shock. He continued testing the sword, and this time, he activated the engraved ability. Whoosh! The ground started freezing when he struck it with his sword. In the next moment, sharp icicles burst forth and flew in all directions. What fearsome ability! It is powerful, but I need to master it first. Otherwise, my allies will also be injured every time I use it. Alaric was satisfied with the improvements in his sword. Now, I need to give it a proper name. Alaric pondered deeply and after almost an hour of thinking, his eyes lit up. Frigid Dragon Sword. He felt that it was the most fitting name among all the names he had come up with. From now on, you will be called Frigid Dragon. As if to respond to his words, the sword emitted a more brilliant blue light. Alaric played around with it until he was satisfied. When he sheathed his sword, he noticed that the surrounding trees were already covered by a layer of frost. Oops. He couldn't just leave them be, so he immediately used mana to melt the ice. After removing all the layers of frost on the trees, he left and went to look for Smith Heinrich and Jared Paxley. He wanted to discuss the new business plan with them. After he left, a figure appeared on top of a tree. She was dressed in dark-colored clothes and there was a pair of daggers strapped on her legs. Alaric Silversword, what an interesting young man. She stared deeply at Alaric's disappearing back view. When she could no longer see him, she turned into a blur and disappeared with a whoosh. Alaric found Smith and Jared fishing by the astral lake with some elven warriors they had made friends with. "My lord." Smith Heinrich was the first to notice him. "Lord Alaric." His son, Dylan Heinrich, was also there. The guy stopped what he was doing and approached Alaric with a big smile on his face. Alaric evaded his bear hug and kicked his butt while snorting with an exasperated look. "Is this still the glorious Dylan Heinrich that I once knew?" Alaric smiled bitterly. He didn't know if Dylan would still become the man that he was in his past life. "No. He will be stronger in this life with my support." Alaric was certain of this. House Heinrich had been the most supportive ally, so he planned to reward them with more resources. With enough resources, he believed that Dylan would become an elite knight faster than he did in his past life. "Lord Smith, Lord Jared, I would like to speak with you about something important. Can we talk somewhere more quiet?" Alaric glanced at the two with a stern look. Hearing this, Smith and Jared could already guess what this was all about, so they nodded at his request. They went further from the others for some privacy before they began their conversation. "I am sure you can already guess what this is all about, but just to make sure that we are on the same page, I will say it. The bejeweled nectar and the other elven delicacies, I want to introduce them to the Empire's market. I cannot do this on my own, so I would like to ask for your cooperation." Alaric stated his intentions. "It will be an honor to cooperate with you in business, my lord." The two immediately expressed their desire to work together. This was a big opportunity for their households, something that would significantly increase their financial prospects. "Good." Alaric smiled faintly. "Then let us discuss how we should divide the profits." His eyes narrowed into slits. Although he was willing to share the business, he wanted to gain more for his household. Chapter 210, Visiting Lucas at the Clinic. It took them slightly over an hour to decide how the profits would be distributed. As the main contributor, House Silversword would take most cut, while the two households would receive less even if they combined their shares. Furthermore, both households would also have to cough up the capital to start the business. Despite the unreasonable distribution of shares, both House Heinrich and House Paxley were willing to take the risk. They were confident in the success of the business, so they agreed with Alaric's terms. After their discussion, Jared and Smith continued fishing with the elven warriors, while Alaric headed to the clinic to check his father's condition. The clinic was near the central square of the kingdom, and Alaric happened to encounter some elven warriors. "It's Lord Alaric." "Lord Alaric." The elven warriors stopped to greet him. They had witnessed the human warriors' ferocity and skills in battle, but the ones who stood out were Lucas and Alaric. The former displayed his unrivaled power, and he had even killed a monster that was about to cross the catastrophe grade. On the other hand, Alaric showcased his amazing leadership that was worthy of praise. Alaric waved his hand at the elven warriors. He smiled at them and asked, "Can you guys tell me where the clinic is located? I have been walking around for a while, but I am not familiar with the road." Hearing this, one of them immediately responded, "You just need to go straight, my lord. At the end of this path, you have to turn left." "Thank you. I will see you guys later." Alaric cupped his fists at the elven warriors before he left. He followed the direction that the elven warriors had told him, and he soon found himself in front of a big treehouse. From outside, he could already smell the heavy scent of herbs and medicine. The elven warriors guarding the clinic didn't stop him from entering. A while later, Alaric found Lucas inside one of the rooms. Due to the large number of injured soldiers, his father had to share the room with a human warrior and 3 elven warriors. Furthermore, all of them were familiar faces. Dahan, Igris, and who is this guy again? Is it Arsel or something? Whatever. As for the human warrior, it was someone from House Heinrich. The guy was heavily injured, so the elves sent a one-ringed beast soul master with a healing integrated monster trait to monitor his condition. "My lord." Alaric bowed to Lucas. The latter was already in better condition, but he still needed a week to fully recover. This made Alaric feel relieved. "Alaric. How are you, son?" Lucas smiled upon seeing him. He beckoned to Alaric and gestured at him to sit on the chair next to his bed. Alaric took his seat and replied. I have been well, my lord. I got Sir Neo to engrave an ability on my short sword. While saying this, he grabbed the frigid dragon's sword and handed it to Lucas. Lucas was surprised when he felt the coldness of the sword. He hadn't even unsheathed the sword, but it was already emitting intense coldness that could greatly affect ordinary people. This is not an ordinary relic-level sword. He could tell that it had already exceeded the power of a relic-level weapon. Lucas slowly pulled the sword from the scabbard, revealing an incredibly sharp blade with splashes of blue. Good sword. The sword's icy attribute was enhanced by Sir Neo's engraved ability. You should thank him. He must have consumed a lot of energy during the engraving process, said Lucas as he handed the sword back to Alaric. Yes, my lord. I will visit Sir Neo later to express my gratitude. Alaric nodded in agreement. You should leave. There is nothing for you to do here. The healers are taking care of us, so you do not need to worry. Lucas waved his hand, signaling for him to leave. Alaric was already satisfied to see his father recovering well, so he didn't linger for long and left after bidding him farewell. After Alaric left, Rizel, who had his eyes closed, suddenly sat up straight. He then looked at Lucas and said, You have a good son, Lord Lucas. Rizel also had a son, but he didn't possess a soul mark and he wasn't cut out to become a warrior. He envied Lucas for having an amazing son like Alaric. Lucas was taken aback. He didn't expect the stern elven general to open up a conversation. I am lucky. I did not want him to become a warrior, but he surpassed my expectations. He is not even 20 yet, but he is already an elite knight. He felt proud when he said these words. Rizel snorted. He knew that Lucas wasn't showing off, but he felt even more jealous. Lucas raised an eyebrow and stared at him with an innocent look. He wondered why the elven general's mood had suddenly changed. What a moody elf. Is he bipolar or something? Meanwhile, Alaric headed to Neo's residence, which wasn't far from the clinic. He asked around to get the exact location and he later arrived in front of a humble treehouse sitting on the branch of a towering tree. What should I do? Should I call him or should I wait here? Alaric was stumped. He didn't know the elven customs, so he didn't know what to do. Just then, someone suddenly stepped out of the treehouse. It was Neo, the very person that he was looking for. Lord Alaric, please come inside. Someone is waiting for you. Alaric was surprised, but he still nodded and jumped onto the branch with a single leap. Whoosh! He followed Neo inside the treehouse and saw Ivana sitting on the chair, looking completely relaxed while drinking her morning tea. Ivana! Alaric exclaimed, wondering what she was doing in Neo's treehouse. Looking at his expression, Ivana explained herself. Elder Neo is like a second father to me. I always visit his treehouse for a cup of tea. Come and sit with me. Elder Neo's tea is much better than the ones you drink in your town. Chapter 2:11, Your sword has no heart. Alaric didn't reject her offer. All right. He nodded his head. Hearing this, the elven princess stood up and poured tea for him. When do you plan to go back? She asked. Alaric watched her pour tea on his teacup as he responded. Once my father recovers, we will go back home. If we are gone for too long, our people will feel uneasy. After she had filled his teacup, Alaric thanked her. Amen. Ivana hummed in response as she took her seat. What do you think of my Greenwood kingdom? She suddenly asked before taking a light sip of her tea. Her eyes darted around as if she was hiding something from him. Alaric failed to notice this since he was surprised by the taste of the tea. Your kingdom is situated in a very scenic location. Sometimes I even wish that I could live in such a beautiful place. His voice trailed off and ended with a sigh. Ivana put down her teacup and stared deeply at him. There are times when I mistake you for an old man. You speak like you are reflecting on the vicissitudes of your life. Alaric's lips curved upward upon hearing her words. Is that so? You might be right. You can stay here for a while if you want. Neo, who was listening on the sidelines, did a double take when he heard those words. He sighed and stared at the young human with a hint of resentment. He knew that the elven princess had already fallen in love. She hadn't realized it yet, but Neo was certain that she had feelings for Alaric. Meanwhile, Alaric had also sensed her unusual feelings, but he didn't know how to react to it, so he pretended like he was unaware. He held some good feelings for her, but he was afraid of the repercussions it would bring once their relationship was exposed to the world. House Silversword had already gained some strength, but it was just a small household in the grand scheme of things. An elf marrying a human happened once in the past, and the ending wasn't good for both parties. It was a tragedy. Alaric didn't want this to happen to him and Ivana. With a forced smile, Alaric replied. Maybe another time. I see. All right. Ivana was a bit disappointed, but she didn't show it to her face. Their conversation continued after that, but there was already a hint of awkwardness. After another half an hour, Alaric excused himself. Before taking his leave, he expressed his gratitude to Neo. He's gone, Neo muttered as he watched Alaric disappear into the forest. Elder Neo, I don't understand what is happening to me. Why does it feel unusually painful? Uttered Ivana in a quivering voice as she clutched her chest. Neo took a deep breath and sighed while shaking his head. Do you like him? Ivana was stunned by the sudden question. She was about to say no, but she found herself unable to utter those words. It was then that she realized that she had already fallen in love with Alaric. I like him. I see. I understand now. Alaric felt that he had lost something precious as he walked further from Neo's treehouse. He couldn't stop himself from thinking about Ivana. He decided to polish his dual sword technique in an attempt to get her out of his mind, but he couldn't maintain his focus, and he kept on making mistakes. What happened? Your sword lacks the decisiveness it had when you fought with the goblins. A pleasant but cold voice suddenly drifted into his ears. Alaric was stunned. He looked up and saw an elven woman dressed in black leather armor. It was Rosalie, the Grand Elder of the Greenwood Kingdom and Ivana's Grand Aunt. Grand Elder, I didn't know you were here. I apologize for disturbing you. Alaric lowered his head. This elf was a generation older than the Elven King, Garendel, so he didn't dare disrespect her. Rosalie jumped down from the tree and landed in front of him with a whoosh. Alaric Silversword, your sword has no heart. What is weighing on your mind? Rosalie calmly stared at the young man. It wasn't long before she had last seen him, so she was surprised to see the sudden change in his swordsmanship. She had a good impression of this young man, so she wanted to help him clear his doubts. Alaric hesitated for a moment before he asked. Grand Elder, if it was you, would you be willing to take on the entire world for the sake of someone precious? He heard that this elven woman had lived for centuries, so he wanted to know her opinion. Perhaps, he might even gain some valuable life advice from her. Rosalie was taken aback, and she seemed to have discovered the reason for his sword's indecisiveness. She pondered deeply before she answered. I would rather risk it all than regret it for the rest of my life. When she uttered these words, she recalled the face of someone she had long forgotten, and it evoked a feeling of guilt and sadness. You would not want to live with that regret, she added, her voice echoing with intense emotion. Hearing this, Alaric recalled the scenes he had witnessed in his past life. The death of his loved ones, the death of his comrades, and the fragmentation of the empire. He didn't want to witness those things again. You are right, Grand Elder. Thank you for your reminder. Now, I know what to do. Alaric bowed deeply at her. Her words had awakened him. He had almost done something that would make him regret it. Just the thought of it made him feel scared. Tomorrow, I will face her feelings. He made a decision. Amen. I am glad to be of help. Rosalie nodded and said. Now show me if you have truly overcome this hurdle. Alaric smiled faintly and unsheathed his sword. Chapter 212, The Realm Above Transcendence. Alaric brandished the frigid dragon sword, causing petals of ice to fall. It was a simple sword slash, yet it carried immense power that surpassed the realm of elite knights. Rosalie didn't expect him to release such formidable power without imbuing his mana into the sword. Whoosh! Alaric's attack even left a fissure of ice on the ground. Impressive swordsmanship, Rosalie praised. He only showed one move, but as an expert, she noticed the intricate details behind his sword strikes. The angle, the precision, and the force were perfectly balanced to deliver that slash. Alaric sheathed his sword and bowed to her in gratitude. "Thank you for your teachings, Grand Elder." Rosalie waved her hand. "I have cleared your doubts. If you still have more questions, you can find me there." She pointed at a certain tree about 50 meters from them. "My treehouse is on top of that tree." Alaric squinted his eyes and followed the direction she was pointing. There is indeed a treehouse. She is really a master of stealth, even her treehouse is camouflaged perfectly with its surroundings. Rosalie didn't linger and left with a whoosh. Alaric resumed his sword training to familiarize himself with his short sword. Due to his SSS-Rank swordsmanship trait, he managed to master the frigid dragon sword in just less than half an hour. Others would have taken days or even weeks before they could properly wield their weapons, but to Alaric, it was just a matter of minutes. After completing his sword training, he bowed in the direction of Rosalie's house before he left. On the second day after the battle with the goblin colony, Lucas was discharged from the clinic. Alaric came early to pick him up. Smith Heinrich and Jared Paxley were also there to check his condition. "My lord, congratulations on your discharge." Smith and Jared cupped their fists at Lucas. "My lord." Alaric smiled at his father. Lucas calmly walked out of the clinic and replied, "The healer said that I can go out now, but I still need 5 more days to fully recover. Also, I am not allowed to do any physical activity since my internal organs have not healed." "I understand. I will ask someone to prepare nutritious meals for you to hasten your recovery. Also, I have something to give you, my lord." Alaric took out the mana pearl that he got from Ivana as a gift. Lucas raised his eyebrows upon hearing this. He knew that Alaric received this mana pearl from the elven princess as a gift. "But that is your..." Alaric shook his head. "You need it more than me, my lord." If he could use the mana pearl, he would have used it for himself, but unfortunately, he could no longer absorb mana using conventional means. Since he had gotten the cyan screen, he had never succeeded in absorbing mana from natural resources. He did get the mana gathering trait, but he could only gather mana during mana training and in limited amounts too. Lucas stared deeply at his son as he took the mana pearl. "Thank you, my son. With this mana pearl and the beast soul crystal of that winged goblin monarch, I would have a higher chance of advancing to the next realm." Jared and Smith gasped in shock at his words. Lucas was already at the peak among the transcendent knights. If he made another advancement, he would reach a level that only a handful in the Empire has ever achieved, the realm of mythical knights. A mythical knight was someone who had transcended humanity. They could live for over 2 centuries, and there were even some who had survived 3 centuries. Aside from their long lifespan, they also possessed unimaginable powers. Their mana is already dense enough to allow them to fly. Due to their near-godly abilities, people respectfully call them venerable. "Congratulations in advance, my lord." "Congratulations, my lord." Jared and Smith showered him with early congratulations. A mythical knight was someone that they could only look up to. Even the imperial family had to be careful when speaking to an expert at that level. They could already imagine the turmoil it would cause once Lucas stepped into that fabled realm. Perhaps the entire empire would be turned upside down. This strengthened their resolve to follow Lucas and House Silversword. "Everyone, please protect me while I absorb the energy inside the mana pearl and the beast soul crystal," Lucas requested as he cupped his fists. He felt that this was the perfect place to advance. He trusted the elves' integrity, and there was also Galliner and Warwick who would hold things together in case something goes wrong. Please be at ease, my lord. We will ensure your safety during your advancement. We will not allow anyone to harm you. Smith Heinrich remarked with a serious look. The warriors of my house Paxley will protect you with our lives. Jared declared. Lucas smiled faintly. Then I will be in your care. Lucas and Alaric went somewhere more quiet. Meanwhile, Jared and Smith summoned their warriors to guard Lucas' advancement. This should be a good place. The weather is perfect too. Lucas muttered as he embraced the morning sun. He then looked at Alaric and nodded. I will begin. All right. You must be careful, Dad. You must not be hasty. Alaric reminded him. Failing to advance could cause severe consequences, and Lucas might experience the same thing that William had gone through. Lucas understood his concern. Do not worry. I am well prepared for this moment. He reassured his son. He took out the mana pearl and the beast soul crystal of the winged goblin monarch. The energy produced by these two items was so intense that if they were absorbed incorrectly, it would cause one's body to explode. Lucas sat cross-legged and made himself more comfortable before he began with the absorption process. To increase his focus, he closed his eyes. Alaric silently watched this scene. Good luck, Dad. Chapter 213, Mythical Night. By the time the human warriors had arrived at the location, a strange phenomenon appeared. Due to the large amount of mana congregating around Lucas, it had become visible even to ordinary people. The shapeless and colorless mana created a blue hue in the form of a tornado, twisting vigorously as Lucas absorbed everything like a black hole. When a blue tornado hits, a mythical knight is born. Now I understand what this quote means. Smith was awestruck by what he was witnessing. What a magnificent view. Jared watched the scene unfold with wide eyes. Meanwhile, the human warriors were similarly stunned. They had never seen this kind of phenomenon before. Lord Lucas is advancing to the realm of mythical knights. A knowledgeable warrior exclaimed in surprise. His words caused a collective gasp of shock. A new venerable has arrived. The Venerable of the North. Venerable Lucas of the North. Everyone chanted with excited faces. The North was always treated as a barren countryside, and it had never produced a venerable throughout history. However, things were about to change with Lucas' advancement. At this moment, the elves had finally noticed the strange phenomenon, and they rushed to check the situation. The first ones to arrive were the Transcendents and the three-ringed beast soul masters. Among them was the elven king himself, Garandel Greenwood. He stared at the man who was at the center of this phenomenon with a look of disbelief. Lucas is advancing to the realm of mythical knights. A figure suddenly appeared next to him and exclaimed. Your Majesty, Lord Lucas is. It was Sunset who hurried over when she sensed the commotion. A few more elven experts gathered around him, and they all expressed their shock upon learning the situation. With a mythical knight as our ally, we do not have to fear those old undying monsters anymore. Upon thinking about this, Garandel issued a series of commands. Protect Lord Lucas. Inform our elven warriors to secure the perimeter and make sure that no wild beast or monster would disturb his advancement. Yes, Your Majesty. The elven warriors replied in unison. This was a big matter. Some elves were worried that they would be oppressed by the humans, but some of them also thought that it was a blessing to have a powerful human as an ally. A few hours passed by in the blink of an eye. Lucas had already absorbed all the energy inside the mana pearl, but he still hadn't achieved a breakthrough. This time, he started absorbing the energy contained inside the beast soul crystal of the winged goblin monarch. Some monsters and wild beasts were attracted by the commotion, but they were quickly eliminated by the elven and human warriors. 3 hours later, Lucas had already absorbed half of the energy inside the beast soul crystal. I hit a bottleneck, but this is not enough to stop me from advancing. Lucas thought when he felt a strong resistance during his breakthrough. The absorption process became more difficult and it felt like something was blocking the mana from entering his body. I must break this barrier to advance. He pushed himself to the limits, causing his body to shake from the huge influx of energy that was flowing into his body. His eyes sprang open, revealing his bloodshot eyes. He felt a heart-gripping pain, but he gritted his teeth and endured it all. In the next moment, the barrier that was preventing the energy from entering his body was finally broken. He had successfully stepped into the realm of mythical knights. Lucas didn't stop absorbing the energy from the beast's soul crystal. He took in every last drop of energy to stabilize his advancement. After he had absorbed the last drop of energy, the beast's soul crystal disintegrated and turned into dust. Lucas swept his gaze over the crowd, making everyone feel uneasy. His eyes momentarily stopped at Alaric. I have succeeded. Thank you for ensuring my safety, everyone. Lucas cupped his fists at the gathered crowd to express his gratitude. There was a moment of silence for a brief moment. Clap. 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 Alaric clapped his hands, breaking the silence. Everyone followed suit and they all gave Lucas a round of applause. Congratulations on your advancement, my lord. Alaric smiled at his father. Lucas' breakthrough was a pleasant surprise for him. This would give House Silversword a protective barrier in the coming fight for the throne. His power would also deter the people who had bad intentions toward their family. Congratulations on your advancement, Venerable Lucas. We greet the Venerable. Everyone lowered their heads, including the Elven King. Garandel didn't dare use his authority to undermine Lucas. His Greenwood kingdom wasn't powerful enough to offend the Venerable. Lucas waved his hand. There is no need to be formal. I have been told by my son that we will become allies soon. How about we finalize this alliance and seal the agreement? He turned his gaze to the Elven King as he said those words. Garandel's eyes brightened upon hearing this. As you wish, Venerable One. He nodded in response. The Elven King invited Lucas to his treehouse to seal the agreement. Meanwhile, the crowd dispersed and they relayed the situation to those who didn't spectate the event. As the crowd began to disperse, Alaric noticed Ivana leaving together with Neo. Ivana, wait. He called out to her. Some were surprised when they heard someone intimately call the Elven princess name, but when they realized that it was Alaric, they pretended like they didn't hear anything. Heck! Who would dare stop the son of a mythical knight from flirting with someone? Ivana yelped when she heard his familiar voice. She stopped in her tracks and slowly turned around. Alaric. After she had learned that she liked him, Ivana could no longer stare at his eyes. Alaric stood before her and said with a serious expression. Ivana, I need to speak with you. The Elven princess felt inexplicably nervous, but she still nodded in response. All right. Follow me. Chapter 214, From now on, you are my woman. Ivana brought Alaric to her treehouse which was located near the river. When looking from her window, one could see the beauty of the river and the tranquility of the forest. This is my treehouse. I asked Neo to build this for me when I was young. Only 3 people know this place other than me. You are the 4th. Ivana said as she opened the door. The interior of her treehouse was simple with no extravagant features. Every piece of furniture was well organized, giving the treehouse a clean look. The decoration in her treehouse perfectly represented Ivana's personality, simple yet elegant. The view here is beautiful, Alaric remarked as he looked outside her window. Ivana pointed to a vacant seat and gestured for him to sit down as she asked. What do you want to tell me? Alaric didn't sit down. He walked toward Ivana, stopped in front of her, and whispered. Do you like me? Ivana jolted in surprise. She didn't expect him to ask her this in such a straightforward manner. She stammered and averted her gaze to hide her blushing cheeks. However, Alaric noticed that her ears were reddening. He leaned forward and moved his face closer to her. Ivana, you cannot hide it from me. The elven princess panicked when she felt his warm breath blowing into her face. What do you mean? I do not understand why you are saying. She didn't dare look at him in the eye. Alaric smiled at her futile attempt to hide her feelings. He cupped her chin and made her look straight at him. You have the most beautiful eyes, Ivana. Alaric was mesmerized. Her eyes were so enchanting that it felt like he would be sucked into them the longer he stared at her. The elven princess didn't know how to react when she heard his sweet words. She just stared back at him with a mixture of nervousness, embarrassment, and expectation. Alaric stared at her full lips. At this distance, he could smell her fragrant breath, which reminded him of the scent of flowers after the rain. He no longer held back his desire. He leaned forward and kissed her lips. Ivana's eyes widened. She thought of pulling away, but her body didn't listen to her. She could only close her eyes and allow Alaric to take advantage of her. Alaric noticed that she had given up on resisting. He skillfully pried open her mouth using his tongue. She seemed to have realized his intentions, but instead of resisting, she opened her mouth and let him explore his way through. Ivana trembled at the sudden stimulation. She felt like she was slowly losing control of her mind and body. The mood became even more intimate the longer they shared this passionate moment. Unknowingly, the two drowned deeper into the sensual atmosphere. Ivana didn't know when it happened, but she realized that she was already sitting on top of Alaric with her arms tightly hugging his neck. Furthermore, Alaric's shirt had already fallen to the floor, exposing his well-built body. She tried to get up, but Alaric subconsciously grabbed her back and pulled her closer to him. What is this? I feel something rubbing against me down there, could it be? Ivana panicked when she realized what was happening. Wait, Alaric. She pushed his chest to break free from his tight embrace. Her voice pulled him from the dreamy illusion, and when he regained his senses, he was shocked about what he had done. This. Ivana's white hair was disheveled and her clothes were no longer in the right place. She quickly arranged her clothes and stared at him with resentment. This guy took advantage of her, and he had even seen something that he shouldn't have. Alaric. She muttered in a cold voice. Alaric could sense the anger and embarrassment in her voice, so he quickly explained himself. I did not intentionally look at. All right. It was intentional. I could not stop myself after seeing your lips. Things had already happened, so Alaric didn't bother to explain and just told her the truth. Ivana was stumped, and the words that she was about to say were stuck in her throat. Her anger also subsided when she saw his sincere face. Hearing this, Alaric immediately let go of her and looked at her with an apologetic smile. Seeing his expression, Ivana snorted, stood up, and adjusted her clothes. Sure, it was not intentional. Alaric teased her as he grabbed his shirt. Ivana turned around and walked toward the window. What are we now? She asked, her voice echoing with confusion. Alaric felt a pang of guilt when he saw her vulnerability. He hardened his resolve and put on a determined face. He then stood up and walked slowly toward her. Alaric grabbed her slim waist and pulled her gently into his embrace. From now on, you are my woman, he said in a domineering tone. Ivana felt a mixture of joy and excitement, but she didn't show it to her face. So this is what it feels like to be in love. What a wonderful feeling, she thought as she turned around and looked up at him. Can we do it again? Alaric whispered teasingly. Ivana stomped on his foot and pinched his waist as she muttered. I will follow you to North Pine Town and tell that lady named Hershey about what happened here. Her words made Alaric retract his evil hands, but then he suddenly grabbed her waist and pulled her even closer to him. Do you think I am afraid? This time, it was her turn to panic. She yelped and tried to escape from his grasp, but she found herself unable to break free. Alaric. She nervously looked at him. Sensing her panicking eyes, Alaric released her and patted her head. You look cute when you are nervous. Meanwhile, while the two of them were exchanging sweet words, Lucas and Garendel were currently discussing the alliance between House Silversword and the Greenwood Kingdom. You must promise me that you will not trade with any other human households. Lucas didn't want to share this business with someone else. He might not be good with business, but he knew that if they had to share with more people, the lesser their profits would be. Garendel furrowed his eyebrows. This would mean that House Silversword would take full control of their trade. This might not be a problem for the time being, but nothing was certain in the future. After a few minutes of silence, the Elven King replied. All right, but in the event that we find out that House Silversword is taking advantage of us, we must be free to pull out. Lucas nodded. This was only natural, so he agreed without hesitation. No problem. Garendel heaved a sigh of relief. He was a bit nervous since Lucas was no longer a transcendent like him, but a mythical knight. Suddenly, he thought about something important. By the way, is Alaric engaged to someone, or is he married to someone? He noticed that his daughter was attracted to Alaric, so he wanted to know if there was a chance for them. Lucas was taken aback, but he understood the implications behind this inquiry. He also sensed that his son liked the elven princess. To tell you the truth, my son is currently engaged to the only daughter of House Paxley. They had already scheduled their marriage, but we might have to move the schedule because of the recent events. Hearing this, Garendel was disappointed. Is that so? What are you worried about, Your Majesty? I do not think there would be an issue if my son marries your daughter. Lucas was open-minded about this since he had grown up in a society where polygamy was seen as normal. Garendel raised an eyebrow at his words. Very rarely would the elves marry more than one partner. Some elves were even averse to this sort of relationship. If it is Alaric, I do not think it would be a problem. He is a talented young man who is bound to inherit Lucas' legacy, but I cannot make the final decision. He didn't want to intervene in his daughter's marriage. This was something that he had promised to Ivana's mother before her death. I will discuss this with my daughter first. Chapter 215, Ivana's mother, the late Elven Queen. Their discussion ended on a positive note. Venerable One, are you planning to return soon? Garendel asked on their way out of the treehouse. Lucas found his new title quite awkward, but he still nodded and replied in a calm tone. We will return once our injured soldiers are ready to go. I see. Then I will inform our healers to prioritize the recovery of your warriors. Garendel didn't insist on making them stay. He knew that Lucas still had to take care of his territory. That would be great. Thank you, Your Majesty. Lucas responded with a look of gratitude. A moment later, they finally stepped out of the treehouse. This is as far as I can take you, Venerable Lucas. I still need to take care of some things, so I hope you will understand my situation, said Garendel in an apologetic manner. If he could, he would follow Lucas all day and deepen their friendship. However, he was bound to his duties as the king of the Greenwood Kingdom. Lucas waved his hand. Of course. Let us talk again sometime, Your Majesty. I will take my leave first. He cupped his fists at the Elven King as he bid him farewell. He then turned around and left. Garendel watched him leave with a complex expression. I wonder what kind of storm he will make once he returns to the Empire. Garendel had visited Estania before during his younger days, so he knew a thing or two about the Empire. I wonder if I have the chance to be a venerable. Garendel was amused by his own ridiculous thoughts. Meanwhile, Alaric and Ivana had already stepped outside the treehouse. They tacitly agreed to go on a walk to prevent themselves from making the same mistake earlier. Ivana, I am curious about something. Do you know who engraved the ability on General Reisel's sword? He had witnessed the sword's power and he was certain that it was on the same level as his frigid dragon sword. The only difference was that Reisel's sword had a major side effect if repeatedly used, whereas Alaric's sword had no such detrimental effect. Hearing this, Ivana thought of a certain person and replied with an emotional voice. It was my mother. Alaric's eyes widened at her response. I am sorry, I did not know. No wonder I could not find someone with the Berserker monster integrated trait. It turns out that it was Ivana's mother who had engraved the ability on that sword. Ivana shook her head. It is all right. I might as well tell you since we are on the topic. My mother was the strongest elf in the kingdom. She was a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster. Her main monster integrated trait was Blood Berserker. It was an ability that made her stronger the more blood she absorbed from the enemies she had slain. She told him a few things about her mother, and for the first time, Ivana revealed her vulnerable side. She tried not to cry as she told him this story. When Alaric heard that her mother was a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster, he was stunned. This was an expert who could stand above Astania unfettered and unbound by any law. A 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster was someone who had formed a mana ring around their heart, a special vessel that stores mana. With the help of this vessel, they could wield unimaginable amounts of mana, which also made casting skills easier for them. That was the reason why experts at this level were feared in the Empire. Even a 10,000-man army of skilled warriors would collapse under the terrifying might of a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster. Your mother was a great queen. Alaric sighed as he patted her back. It was lamentable for such a powerful woman to meet her end in such a tragic manner. According to Ivana, the late elven queen had to sacrifice herself to kill 2 catastrophe-grade monsters, all for the sake of their kingdom's survival. 3 catastrophe-grade monsters attacked our kingdom at that time. My mother managed to kill 2 and severely injured the last one, but she was also not spared from death after that battle. A mixture of emotions flashed in Ivana's eyes. Alaric sensed her sorrow, her regret, and her rage. Suddenly, he realized something important. Wait. You mean there is still one catastrophe-grade monster that survived that battle? That is right, but you do not need to worry. Its injuries were so serious that it might not be able to recover in the next century. Ivana replied. Alaric felt a bit relieved to hear that, but he still felt unsettled knowing that such a formidable creature was hidden somewhere in the enchanted woodlands. But you cannot ignore the possibility that it might recover faster than you all had anticipated. Alaric reminded her with a stern voice. Ivana narrowed her eyes and nodded. We have been preparing for that too. The elves had also thought of this possibility, so they had made measures in case the monster would return to exact revenge. But she didn't disclose the information to Alaric, for this was related to the core secrets of the Greenwood Kingdom. It seems I was overthinking it. Alaric shook his head. The two were silent for a while before Ivana spoke. You must come here and see me often. If you don't, I will come and find you. Alaric's mouth twitched upon hearing this. Of course. I will visit you often. I promise. He sent her a reassuring smile. Bring that young lady named Hershey with you the next time you come here. I want to get to know her better. Ivana didn't have friends in her age group since her identity was very special. No one dared to get closer to her because the elves were very strict about hierarchy. The only friend she had was Neo, but he was way older than her, so they don't share the same interests. Alaric wasn't against the idea. He felt that it was only right for them to know each other. All right. Chapter 216, Going Back Home. Days went by in a flash and the time of their departure finally arrived. It was already the 30th of April. They had stayed a few days more than what they had planned because they waited for the injured human warriors to recover. The highest-ranking members of the Elven Kingdom gathered to send them off. It was a grand farewell since even the king had attended. This was to show respect to the human warriors who had traveled long distances to help them overcome a battle they were destined to lose. Remember your promise, Alaric. Ivana put on a composed look to hide her sadness. I will not forget my promise. Alaric smiled at her. He bid her farewell one last time before he mounted his horse. At this moment, Luca's stern voice echoed. Move out. We are going home. Alaric stared deeply at Ivana's figure before he urged his horse to follow the group. The elves watched them leave with complicated expressions. They never expected that they would actually befriend humans, the very beings they once hated. Garandel waved his hand and commanded. Have the king's guards follow them in secret and make sure that no monsters would attack them on their way out of the enchanted woodlands. Since Rizal was still recovering, the deputy commander of the king's guards, a middle-aged elven warrior with long golden hair, temporarily took command. This elf was peak elite knight, a formidable warrior who had experienced numerous battles. In terms of experience, he wasn't that far behind Rizal. "Yes, your majesty." The deputy commander of the king's guards acknowledged his command with a deep bow. He then made a hand gesture and commanded his subordinates. "Let's get going." He then left with 100 veteran elven warriors. After they left, Garandel turned his gaze to his daughter and said, "Ivana, we need to talk." Ivana stared coldly at him and walked away without saying a word. Seeing this, Garandel sighed and shook his head. "It seems like I can only use my secret weapon," he thought to himself as he cleared his throat and spoke. "This is related to your marriage." Just as he had expected, Ivana stopped and turned around, her face turning frosty. "Do you plan to intervene with my marriage?" Garandel approached her and replied. "I talked with Venerable Lucas and he asked me if you are willing to marry his son, Alaric. I didn't give him a response yet. What do you think? Let us talk somewhere more quiet." Ivana's voice softened. Hearing this, Garandel's lips curved upward. "Let us talk in your treehouse. I have not been there for a while." Ivana hesitated, but she eventually nodded her head. "Fine." Lucas sensed that there were elven warriors following them, but he ignored them. Garandel is really thoughtful. We do not even need to keep watch at night with all the elven warriors he sent. Suddenly, Warwick approached him on horseback and reported. "My lord, the elves are tailing us." "Just let them be. They do not have ill intentions, so just act like you did not notice them." Lucas responded indifferently. Warwick nodded at his words. "All right. I will go and inform our warriors." After he left, Lucas turned his head to his son and beckoned to him. Seeing his signal, Alaric urged his horse to move toward him. "My lord, what are your orders?" "Relax." Lucas smiled at him. "Once we return, we must set a new date for your marriage with Hershey. We cannot let House Paxley wait for too long. Baron Nathan might be starting to get anxious by now." He added. "Yes, my lord. I will bring gifts for them and I will also apologize for the delay and the confusion." Alaric nodded in agreement. "Good." Lucas was satisfied with his response. "I have already sent a messenger bird to inform your mother about this. Once she gets the message, she will begin with the preparations." Thinking about Maria, Lucas felt a wave of guilt. She had been faithful to him and she had never complained or rushed him about giving her a child. While he was immersed in his thoughts, Alaric's response drifted into his ears. "All right. That is good to know." Lucas hesitated for a moment before he asked. "Son, what do you think about having a younger sibling?" Alaric thought that he had misheard it, but when he saw his father's face, he realized that he was serious about this. "That has been one of my greatest wishes." "You do not need to ask me about this, my lord. You must do it," he eagerly replied. Just the thought of carrying a baby sibling filled him with excitement. Lucas chuckled upon hearing his words. Now that he had become a mythical knight, the worries he had carried for years disappeared like smoke. Alaric looked at his father and he couldn't help but feel curious about his stats. He hadn't used his appraisal on Lucas, not even once. "Do you want to use appraisal on the selected target?" "Yes, no." Alaric clicked, "Yes." Error. The target's power is immeasurable. What? It actually failed. Alaric widened his eyes in shock. This had never happened before. He thought that his appraisal trait would allow him to see Lucas' stats, but it seemed like there was a problem. "I see. My appraisal trait has a limit. I can appraise someone who is a realm higher than me, but I cannot appraise someone who is 2 realms above me." This was the most logical explanation he could think of. Too bad. If I had known, I would have used appraisal on Dad before he had advanced to the realm of mythical knight. He felt a bit regretful at the missed opportunity. What are you spacing out there for? Lucas' voice suddenly drifted into his ears, pulling him from his thoughts. Alaric forced a smile and shook his head. It is nothing, my lord. I am just excited to go back home. Lucas stared deeply at him. Earlier, he sensed a peculiar feeling of being watched. He suspected that it was Alaric because he felt the unusual fluctuations of his mana. Chapter 217, Assassination Attempt on Hershey. On the second day of May, they arrived at Turtle Fort. The group had already decided to get some rest, but then they saw the fort's commander, Rommel, rushing toward them on his horseback. He looked anxious as he approached them. Sir Rommel, what happened? Why are you in such a hurry? Lucas raised an eyebrow. The old man didn't even bother to wipe off the sweat on his face. He cupped his fists and reported. My lord, something happened in your estate while you were away. Both Lucas and Alaric were stunned when they heard this. The fort commander took a deep breath and said in a serious voice, Lady Hershey was attacked by a group of assassins. What did you say? Killing intent flashed in Alaric's eyes. He was trembling with fury and he could barely hold back his overflowing anger. Someone actually touched his woman? Unforgivable. Rommel felt a chill upon seeing his cold expression. He didn't expect a young warrior to release such overwhelming killing intent. The young lady is unharmed. Rommel quickly explained. I heard that Sir Henry and the others were able to capture the assassins. Alaric and Lucas were relieved to hear this. It was a good decision to let them stay in the estate. Alaric thought to himself. This hadn't happened in his past life, so it was outside his expectations. Father, we must return as soon as possible, said Alaric as he glanced at Lucas. Lucas nodded in agreement. He then cupped his fists to Rommel to express his gratitude for relaying the information. Thank you, Sir Rommel. I will catch up with you next time. Rommel nodded with a wave of his hand. Please don't worry about that, my lord. Your matters are more important. We will take our leave first. Lucas bid him farewell and brought the group out of the fort. My lord, we would like to follow you to North Pine Town. How dare those people attack Lord Alaric's fiancée? Baron Smith Heinrich was furious. As someone who had pledged allegiance to House Silversword, he wanted to show his support. We will also follow you, my lord. Hershey is my beloved niece. I want to know which bastard dares to assassinate her. Jared muttered through gritted teeth. Hearing this, Lucas nodded. All right. Let us go. The group didn't take a moment of rest. They rushed to North Pine Town. If their mounts were ordinary horses, they wouldn't have survived the trip. Luckily, they were monsters attuned to mana, so they were more resilient. Traveling long distances was just a simple matter for these creatures. The trip that would have normally taken them 7 days only took them 2 days. By the time they arrived at North Pine Town, the horses were already exhausted, so the group had to travel on foot for the rest of the journey. There were more guards stationed at the main gate and they were carefully doing a search on every visitor that wished to enter the town. Suddenly, the arrival of Lucas and the others caused a commotion. What's going on out there? A gatekeeper furiously shouted, but when he quickly recognized Lucas and Alaric's faces from the crowd. My lords. The rest of the guards immediately stopped what they were doing when they heard the gatekeeper's exclamation. Lord Lucas and Lord Alaric have returned. Someone shouted. Lucas beckoned to the commander of the guards and asked. What is the situation? My lord, Lady Hershey was attacked a week after your departure. Luckily, Sir Henry was with her at the time of the attack, so she was unharmed. The assailants have been caught and they are now locked up in prison, awaiting your judgment. The commander of the guards replied. Lucas tapped his shoulder. All right. You guys continue with your tasks and send someone to get our mounts. Yes, my lord. Lucas and the others rushed to the estate on foot. They encountered more patrolling guards along the way. Some were even warriors from House Paxley. They were probably worried about Hershey's safety, so they sent more warriors to increase the town's defenses. The main gate of the estate also had 20 warriors, and an elite knight from House Paxley was even there to supervise them. Upon seeing Lucas' group, the guards were pleasantly surprised. "My lords. We will talk later." Lucas waved his hand impatiently. Seeing that they were in a hurry, the guards didn't dare waste their time. They quickly went to open the gates for them. By the time they arrived at the main mansion, they saw Maria waiting for them. Standing behind her was Arthur and a few more knights. "My lord." Maria felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted off her shoulders the moment she saw them. Due to the recent assassination attempt, she was in a constant state of anxiety. She couldn't eat or sleep well, making her lose a lot of weight. When Lucas saw her emaciated face, his face fell. He felt like his heart was torn to see her in such a terrible condition. Lucas gently embraced her fragile body and whispered, his voice trembling with anger and guilt. "My wife, you lost so much weight. I am sorry for not being here to protect you guys. You do not need to blame yourself, my lord. Besides, Sir Arthur and the other warriors are here to protect us. Nothing happened to us because of their protection." Maria smiled at him. Lucas sent Arthur a grateful look. "Mom, where is Hershey?" Alaric looked around, but he couldn't see Hershey anywhere. "She is resting in her room with Elena," Maria responded. Hearing this, Alaric rushed inside the mansion and headed straight to Hershey's bedroom, which wasn't far from his room. Galliner and Theo followed closely behind him. The latter no longer bothered about etiquette. "I apologize on behalf of my lord. He must be worried about his sister." Jared bowed to Lucas. Lucas waved his hand. "It is all right." Chapter 218, A Familiar Face Among the Assassins. Before Alaric even arrived at Hershey's bedroom, he saw her in the hallway with Henry walking behind her. "Alaric." "Hershey." The two rushed to each other's arms. Galliner and Theo stopped at a certain distance to give the couple some space. The latter was relieved to see that his sister was safe. "Are you hurt?" Alaric inspected her body with a worried look. Seeing his concern for her, Hershey smiled. "I am all right. Sir Henry and Cassandra were there when I was attacked." Alaric let out a sigh upon hearing this. He sent Henry a look of gratitude. "Thank you for protecting her, Sir Henry." Henry shook his head and replied, "It is my duty to protect her during your absence, my lord. It is my task as a warrior of House Silversword." Alaric tapped the old man's shoulder. He then turned his gaze back to Hershey and asked, "Where is Cassandra?" The female knight had always stayed next to her, so it was surprising that she wasn't around. Hershey's face fell as she replied, "To protect me, Dame Cassandra was injured. She is now resting in my bedroom." Alaric frowned. "Take me to see her." He had once fought Cassandra in a friendly duel. She was a skilled warrioress and a loyal knight of House Paxley. Hershey also treated her like an elder sister. Their bond was the same as Alaric's brotherhood with Aldrin. Author's note: in case you forgot, Aldrin is one of House Silversword's most powerful knights. Alaric also treats him like an older brother. Hershey nodded and said, "All right. Follow me." She took them to her bedroom. "I am back, Cassandra. Someone is here to visit you." Hershey hurried over to the bed where a red-haired woman was lying. It was Cassandra. She had a neck brace and her arms were wrapped in gauze. There was also a sword scar on the right side of her face. "My lord." Elena, who was looking after Cassandra, was pleasantly surprised to see him. Alaric smiled at Elena and patted her head. "I am glad that you are unharmed, Elena." The girl looked more mature now. In a few more years, she would be a rare beauty. After exchanging a few words with her, he went to Cassandra's side. "How are you, Dame Cassandra?" The warrioress still looked proud despite her condition. With a calm expression, she replied. According to the doctor, I will make a full recovery in 2 months. I see. That is good to hear. Alaric was shocked when he was inspecting her injuries. She had already advanced to the realm of elite knights. How? I am pretty sure that she was still a bit far from advancing to the next realm. Just what happened during my absence? He was curious to know the details, but conversing with Cassandra was quite difficult because of her proud personality, so he could only temporarily put this matter aside. Thank you for protecting Hershey. These were the words that came out of his mouth. The warrioress stared deeply at him. It is my duty to protect my lady. Alaric nodded. Rest well. I will inform the doctors and the nurses to bring you more herbs and tonics to help your recovery. Hershey walked to his side and whispered. I apologize on her behalf. Cassandra does not like to speak with men, and no one is an exception to this. Alaric smiled at her. It's all right. I do not mind her personality. Alaric stayed there for some time before he excused himself. He planned to visit the prison, so he asked Hershey to stay in her room to look after Cassandra. Hershey seemed to have realized this, so she didn't insist on following him. Alaric headed to the prison with Galliner and Theo. By the time they arrived, there was already a small group waiting for them. It was Lucas and a few others who had come to interrogate the prisoners. Jared approached them and asked with concern. How is Lady Hershey doing? Just as Alaric was about to respond, Theo stepped forward and raised his hand to stop him from speaking. You should go, my lord. I will speak with my uncle. Alaric nodded. All right. Hershey is. He walked toward the prison cell where the assassins were held. Arthur was currently speaking with Lucas, and Alaric overheard their conversation. 5 assassins were killed during the attack, and we have captured the rest, including their leader. There were 9 of them, but 3 died during the interrogation. They are tight-lipped, so we didn't get any useful information from them. Arthur reported. Did you find any clues in their possessions? Lucas asked with a frown. From the looks of it, these assassins might be elites who had been trained to withstand any torture. Only big households could train experts like these men. Arthur shook his head. We confiscated everything they had, but we didn't find any clues. The faces of Lucas and the others darkened. Whoever sent these assassins was more thorough than they had thought. Did Hershey recognize any of the assailants? Alaric suddenly asked. Arthur looked at him and shook his head. My lady was deeply traumatized, so we didn't dare ask for her assistance during the interrogation. Alaric nodded. It wasn't their fault, so he didn't blame them. Open the cell. I want to see their faces. Arthur nodded, turned around, and unlocked the prison cell. Without hesitation, Alaric went in. Seeing this, Galliner and the others immediately followed to ensure his safety. Inside the cell were 6 men who were covered in blood. They had been subjected to all sorts of torture, so their bodies were riddled with wounds. There was even one of them who was missing an eye, and his fingernails were also forcefully removed. The wounds they had suffered were enough to make a grown man cry, but these guys were quite tough. None of them begged for mercy when Alaric entered their cell. HM? Why is it him? Alaric was stunned when he saw a familiar face among the assassins. Chapter 219, Austin's Hesitation. Austin. Alaric exclaimed in his heart as he looked at the middle-aged man who had one of his eyes removed. This person was one of the strongest warriors of House Paxley in his past life. He had become a transcendent and was even promoted by Baron Nathan as the deputy commander of House Paxley's armed guards. His authority was only beneath that of Jared Paxley and the Baron. How could it be him? Alaric was baffled, but then a thought suddenly occurred to him. I understand now. It seems like there is one person that I had overlooked. Vivian. Baron Nathan's wife and the stepmother of Hershey. She had the biggest motive to assassinate Hershey. Thinking about this, Alaric looked at the people who had followed him inside the cell and muttered. Everyone, please step out for a moment. I would like to have a word with these people. Hearing this, everyone hesitated and they couldn't help but turn their heads to Lucas to seek his opinion. Lucas furrowed his eyebrows. He noticed the abrupt change in Alaric's expression the moment he saw one of the assailants. The others might have failed to see it, but this didn't escape his eyes. He nodded to Alaric and gestured for everyone to leave. Let us step out for a moment, everyone. He wasn't worried about his son's safety. Alaric was already an elite knight, a powerful one at that. Even if the assassins managed to break free from their restraints and attack him simultaneously, Alaric could still defend himself. When they heard Lucas' words, everyone retreated and stepped out of the cell. Will Lord Alaric be all right on his own, my lord? Baron Smith asked him the moment they stepped out of the cell. Lucas glanced at him and replied indifferently. You have seen what he is capable of. I do not think those severely wounded men could beat him in a fight. Even if they joined hands, Alaric could end their lives in just a few moves. Everyone could sense his confidence in his son's abilities, but they also agreed with this. They had witnessed Alaric's spectacular dual sword technique. It was a technique that many of them tried to replicate, but no one had succeeded. His skills with the sword were unmatched and he also possessed impressive combat skills that made him stand shoulder to shoulder with seasoned elite knights. To them, Alaric was not just a talented young warrior, but a great fighter who had proven himself time and again. After they left the cell, Alaric approached the middle-aged man whom he had recognized at a glance. Austin. Alaric uttered with a cold voice. The middle-aged man made a slight movement at the sudden mention of his name and Alaric noticed this. No need to pretend. I know who you are, Austin. I also know you were sent by Vivian. Alaric was still unsure about this, but he deliberately mentioned her name to probe for information. How? How does he know my name? Austin was stunned. He acted like he didn't know what Alaric was talking about, but he was already panicking inside. Is there a traitor among us? Austin used his peripheral vision to look at his companions, but he didn't sense any unusual reaction from them. This only made him even more confused. Vivian had secretly trained them and only a handful of people knew his identity. Even Vivian's sons didn't know his name. So how did Alaric discover his name? Austin, let us stop playing with this game. How about doing me a favor? If you confess the truth to the public, I will let you go. Alaric's voice drifted into his ears. This time, Austin looked up to him and replied. I don't know what you are talking about. His voice sounded weird since his face had been disfigured after being beaten up by the interrogators. To his shock, he found out that Alaric wasn't looking at him, but at the person chained next to him. Got you. Alaric grinned as he abruptly turned his head to Austin. Austin's face became even more unsightly to behold. He had actually fallen into Alaric's trap with just a few words. Knowing that he had been discovered, he knew that pretending was already useless. If you want me to confess, then you might as well kill me. He sneered. Is that so? How about this? Alaric rubbed his chin and said. If you expose the person who had instructed you, I will let your comrades go. Austin became silent. The people who were caught along with him were his subordinates. They were friends and even brothers to him, so Alaric's words made him hesitate. As if sensing his hesitation, Alaric added. Austin, those people don't value your lives. All they want is for you guys to complete your missions. To them, you are just disposable tools. If you expose them, you guys can start a new life somewhere far from here. I will even give you some money to start over. Don't listen to his nonsense, Sir Austin. One of the assassins shouted. Alaric merely smiled as if he was unbothered. He bent over and tapped Austin's shoulder. Think about it. I will give you half a day to consider it. I hope that you will give me a satisfactory response the next time I come here. Alaric didn't linger after saying those words. He had already planted a seed in Austin's mind. Alaric waved his hand, turned around, and stepped out of the prison cell with steady footsteps. He had already fulfilled his goal. All that was left was for Austin to fall into his trap. Please allow me to deal with these assassins, my lord. I will give you a satisfactory answer soon. Alaric looked at his father with a calm gaze. Lucas stared deeply at him and nodded. All right. He had a feeling that Alaric would give him another surprise. Thank you for your trust. I will not disappoint you, my lord. Alaric cupped his fists and bowed to him. Chapter 220, The Executioner's Mask. Alaric had already left the prison cell, but his words still echoed repeatedly in Austin's mind. What should I do? He felt tempted to disclose everything, but he was afraid that it was just a ploy to make him confess. Sir, don't fall for Alaric's schemes. This might be a trap. One of the assassins exclaimed, his voice trembling with agitation. Austin lifted his head, but before he could respond, another assassin voiced out his opinion. What if he is telling the truth? This is a chance for us to start a new life. Didn't you guys always wish for this chance before? The others remained silent as if they were seriously contemplating their decision. After almost 5 minutes of silence, another person said, Whatever you decide, we will respect your choice, Sir Austin. Austin felt a huge weight pressing on his shoulders. Thank you for trusting me, everyone. Whatever happens, you guys will always be my brothers. Meanwhile, Alaric headed to his bedchamber alone. He hadn't used one of the items he had gotten from the recent mission, the Elite Knight card. Now that he had some privacy, he felt that it was the perfect time to finally use it. I wonder what kind of warrior I will summon this time. I only got one Elite Knight card before and it summoned Galliner, who is a peak Elite Knight. I just hope that I will summon someone half as good as him. While he was silently praying for a good outcome, he opened the cyan screen. Do you want to use your Elite Knight card? Yes, no. Alaric rubbed his hands before he pressed, yes. In the next moment, a bright light flashed in front of him, forcing him to close his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he saw a tall and muscular warrior with a familiar face. Alaric frowned as he tried to remember where he had seen this person. Wait, this guy. Isn't this the death row criminal who took the blame for Liam's crime? He had finally realized who it was. It was the man he had fought in the sacred duel. My lord, my name is Ulrich. I am at your command. The giant kneeled before him to show his allegiance. Ulrich? Do you know who the butcher is? Alaric probed. This man was known in Ryvad as the Butcher. It was a moniker that was given to him for the crimes he didn't commit. Ulrich opened his mouth and it looked like he was saying something. However, Alaric didn't hear anything, as if a mysterious power prevented him from discovering something. Alaric narrowed his eyes. He had tried this on Galliner before and the same thing happened. Ulrich was someone who had died. Does this mean that Galliner had also died before? He learned a piece of crucial information about the summoned warriors, but he was yet to determine the truth since he didn't know if Galliner had truly died before. However, this was a good clue to start with. Alaric stared at the giant and asked, Ulrich, do you know Liam Paxley? This time, Ulrich's face darkened as killing intent flashed in his eyes. He almost failed to hold back his rage, but as soon as he calmed down, he opened his mouth. However, no words still came out of his mouth. This is indeed him. He still remembers his past, but he cannot speak about it. Well, it looks like he can, but something is preventing me from hearing it. Alaric's head began to hurt the more he tried to comprehend the situation, so he decided to put the matter aside. I will leave it be for the time being since I do not have enough information. Perhaps one day, I will learn why these people were summoned. People know you, so we must do something about your identity. It will not be good for someone to recognize your face. Wait here. I will get something from the family's treasury. Alaric wouldn't be able to explain himself if Ulrich's identity was exposed. After all, this was someone who had died recently and many from his household knew this man. Alaric stepped out of his room and headed straight to the household treasury to get a certain item. The guards protecting the treasury only asked him a few questions before they allowed him entry. How Silversword had grown wealthier in the past few months, especially with the recent business trades with the northern houses. The empty treasury was once again filled with all sorts of treasures and valuable equipment. The item that he was looking for was something that they had for a long time. It was an executioner's mask, an item with unknown origins. Alaric had seen this item in his past life, but he had ignored it. It should be somewhere around here. Alaric looked around the treasury in search of the executioner's mask. After about a quarter of an hour, he finally found it inside an old wooden box. This thing really looks dreadful, Alaric thought with a disgusted expression. He could sense the intense aura of death from the mask. Just how many people did the owner of this mask kill for this to have such an intense aura of death? He realized that this was no ordinary item. He could see some markings on the mask, but it seemed to have deteriorated due to the long time it had been stored. This cannot be a relic, right? He laughed at the idea, but he found it plausible. In his curiosity, he imbued some mana into the mask. Suddenly, the blurred markings on the surface of the mask lit up. Holy shit! His eyes widened when he saw it reveal its true form. The markings on the mask became clearer after Alaric's mana had purified it. It looked like it was taken off from the face of a creature, but he couldn't determine what kind of monster it was. Well, who cares about that? What matters is that this mask can hide Ulrich's identity.